Hey there, Gary Parrish. Welcome back to CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting dodo birds, leaky black. The Eye on College Basketball podcast is presented by Jersey Mike's, a sub above. Matt Norlander is here with me. If you watch it on YouTube, you know what to do to the like button. Shouts to Brandon Davies. You haven't yet subscribed to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel. Please also do that while you're here. Let's get into it. The game of the weekend, as you know, it originated in beautiful Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Number 1, Auburn at number 2, Alabama. It was the first ever 1 versus 2 matchup in SEC men's basketball history. As usual, when it comes to these 1 versus 2 matchups, Bruce Pearl's team won. Final score, Auburn 94, Alabama 85. Auburn jumped to a 9-0 lead right from the start, never trailed in the entire game. Collected its 14th quadrant 1 win. Nobody else has more than 8. Norlander, let's call that the setup. Now let me ask you, what did you make of Auburn's latest in a long line of massive victories away from home?
Yeah, this was a late night, overnight column file for me. I wanted to write kind of big picture on Auburn. That 14 versus 8 number on quad 1 is insane. I do think Auburn is fated to be the number 1 overall seed. While it is mathematically possible that we could get to a point where Auburn won't be the top seed on Selection Sunday, it is inconceivable to me how we will get there. The lead is so outrageous and the SEC is so good that I don't think there's any combination other than Auburn somehow finding a way to lose 4 games and Florida maybe not losing more than 1 the rest of the way that could get Auburn off of the top of the 1 line, or Alabama, which, as I detailed on HQ, has statistically the toughest schedule for the rest of the regular season of any team in the sport. If Alabama was able to go 6-0 against the gauntlet it's about to face down, then yeah, maybe, but that's not how we're going to get there. Auburn right now with the win is in the process of having what could wind up being a pretty damn special season and could be ultimately one of the all-time great teams if gets that number 1 overall seed, goes deep into the tournament. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves there. Mighty impressive. You mentioned the Pearl stuff there. He's done it in road situations both times. Did it in 2008 with his Tennessee Vols going into Memphis. Did it here. Was the only time that an opponent has gone into Coleman Coliseum since Oates got there, and Alabama never even held a lead. Now it got tight in spots there. And I was impressed by Alabama not allowing Auburn to completely run away with it. But your boy here was wrong on the Final 4-1. I did have Alabama winning. Didn't work out so well for me in that regard. I got a few more takeaways in terms of the game in Auburn, big picture, but I don't want to hog the mic too much here. I will say this. Auburn's win makes it just the 4th team to win on the road against a number 2 team in this spot, joining the likes of UNLV, which did it against Arkansas with the old slobber hog back in 91. North Carolina did it at Georgia Tech in 1986. And then Georgetown and St. John's met 3 times in the same season when they were 1 and 2. Georgetown was able to do it when it was on the road. And get that done being the number 1 team. So a lot of stuff even to dive in, but I send it back to you. What were your biggest takeaways? And as you talk here, I'm going to hop out of my chair because I got a light here that's flickering. So I'm going to turn that off so that anyone that might be watching this epileptic doesn't have, I don't know if you're seeing that on the screen or not, but it just started as we podcasted. So take it away. I'll be back in 9 seconds.
It's just outrageous what they're doing. I mean, it's a biggest game in the history of the state. One of the biggest games in the history of the SEC. There's a massive build up to it on both sides, inside the state of Alabama and also nationally. And then you, as the number 1 team in the country, just go into, oh, by the way, it's your biggest rival, and you just go into their building and jump on them 9-0, just like that. And I don't want to say they controlled it from start to finish, because there were moments where it felt like momentum was shifting and like, oh, here come the Crimson Tide. But what I said earlier is true. Auburn never trailed in this game. They jumped to a 9-0 lead and never trailed. To go into the second-ranked team's building and do that is wildly impressive. And it's not like we needed to see something like this from Auburn to know this is the best team in the country. This is a legitimate national championship contender. But it is a reminder that they seem to be operating on a different level than most, if not all. I know in the predictive metrics, they have not separated from the likes of Houston and Duke and a few others. But from a resume perspective, it's not even close right now. And I, like you, can't even, I mean, I guess I've got a pretty good imagination. I could imagine, Auburn losing 2 players to injuries and then it just goes the wrong way. But what I was about to say is it's hard to imagine them not being the number one overall seed in the 2025 NCAA tournament. I just sort of picked up on this yesterday looking at it. Right now, in this moment, the top 6 teams in the country at KenPom are in this order: Auburn, Duke, Houston, Florida, Tennessee, Alabama. Auburn owns wins over, relative to KenPom, number 3 Houston in Houston and number 6 Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Beat number 5 Tennessee at home, and the only losses on the entire resume for Auburn are to number 2 Duke on the road and to number 4 Florida at home. In other words, top 6 teams at KenPom, Auburn's played the other 5, and the only 2 losses of the resume fall into that group, and they've beaten 3 of them. It is not unbelievable, but incredibly impressive what Bruce and his staff have been able to do with this team. And yeah, they're on track to not only, if they are capable of seeing this through, they could go down in history as one of the, certainly modern history, of the great national champions. If they are able to win what might go down in history as the toughest league in the sport that we've ever seen,
right?
More teams to the NCAA tournament than we've ever witnessed. You win that league by multiple games, put together this resume, and then run through the NCAA tournament as well. There could be some really special stuff on tap for that Auburn program.
Yeah, they got to get there, but if they can, certainly it would. I mean, especially like I wrote, last year's UConn team was just an all-time great team, and this Auburn team is getting there. We don't, we had the bracket reveal Saturday. Auburn was the number 1 overall seed with plenty of margin. Bubba Cunningham said on CBS, in the past 4 years, or not even like UConn last year, there just hasn't been a team a month out, because that bracket preview show is always 29 days before we get to the real deal. And, from Bubba's experience the past 4 years, there hasn't been a team that was as far ahead of the competition as Auburn is, which really speaks to Auburn's, to Parrish. The Auburn has not separated in the predictives. They're still clumped in with Duke and Houston and the top end SEC teams. But at the same time, from a resume standpoint, it has. And we're talking about the SEC that going into Saturday had 5 of the top 6 overall seeds. So it's outrageous. We just don't normally get it. Like, we've had teams that have strutted to the number 1 overall seed. That is a thing that we get every 2, 3, 4 years. That's not uncommon. What is uncommon is for a team to be this far out ahead. I had the stat in my column. Kansas. Now, keep in mind, we've only had the quadrant system here for a little more than a half decade. So we don't have, 10, 20, 30, 40 years to pull data from. And so if you really were to go and retroactively try and apply this stuff, you could do it. But regardless, the record for quad 1 wins going into the tournament is 17 by Kansas 2 years ago. Auburn's going to smash that record. It's probably going to get 19 or 20 and reach a height that we might not ever see again, because normally you're not afforded that many, because you play only so many in non-conference play, and then your league is not going to feed that up to you. I mean, if Auburn makes the SEC title game, it's going to cruise past 20. It's super, super impressive. And right now, yeah, this team is making the case to be on a tier 2 itself, certainly with what it's done. If you want to argue about style play, what they are, right now, tomorrow, neutral court, Auburn versus Duke, who would you take? Auburn versus Houston, who would you take? Like, I'm here to hear all those arguments and all that. But the way that they were able to go in, control the conversation, and see, you watch them start to finish, and it was, you had Denver Jones, who did a wonderful job defensively. He is one of the premier defenders in the entire country, and in many ways, he can be the heartbeat of that team even more than Broome. He had himself a nice game. Chaney Johnson is by the week now starting to show that he is willing, wanting, and capable of stepping up in moments where they might, for whatever reason, whether they're just not getting Broome his touches, the opposing team is scouting in on him. Chaney Johnson can get buckets in a variety of ways. Those 2 guys stepped up. And then over the course of the game, it was Broome again. 19 points, 14 boards, 6 assists. He tweaked his ankle and still played through it. And down the stretch, when Alabama got it close, it was Broome who was the deciding factor. I mean, he had a pretty rugged block that was a key defensive moment with about, I want to say there was like 5 minutes to go in the game at that point, and Alabama had a little bit of daylight of hope in that spot, just wouldn't let it happen. Broome this season has had 4 games of at least 18 points, 14 boards, and 5 assists. He had 19, 14, and 6 on Saturday. But those thresholds, 18, 14, and 5, he's got 4 of them. No one else in the country has more than 1. It's why I think, even right now, Flag, he had another nice game. Duke absolutely routed Stanford, whatever. But Broome is narrowly ahead in the National Player of the Year conversation because, again, big stage, road game. He comes up with another big statistical showing. And my last data point for you, GP, is this. Alabama shot 42.1% from the field in effective field goal percentage, and was only 19.2% from 3-point range. I mean, they could not get the ball to go in the bucket at home. Nate Oates, when I talked to him on whatever it was Wednesday, he was really keying in on how important it was going to be to shoot well from three, the way they had just done against Texas. And then this one, it was 1 out of every 5 that went down, wound up being 5 of 26 overall. Those were season lows. Those two numbers I gave you, 19.2% from 3 and then 42.1% effective field goal percentage of the entire season. Auburn, that's how you step up in a hugely anticipated game and remind everyone that you are the national title favorite.
It has not occurred to me until just now to look this up, and I haven't seen anybody else reference it anywhere, but I'd be curious to know this. When is the last time a school was the number 1 overall seed, had a player who was the national player of the year, and a coach who was the national coach of the year? Because that's very much in play right now for Auburn, Bruce Pearl, and Janai Brown.
Well, I've got something quasi like that. Let me just read it off to you real quick, because I asked our research team to look this up. Here are the players. So we can retroactively, we're not going to go too deep on this, but here are the players that played in a 1-2 matchup and that very season won National Player of the Year. Buddy Hield did it in 2016. J.J. Redick did it in 2006 in a Duke UNC game. Elton Brand did it in 98-99 Duke Michigan State. Anton Jameson did it. Marcus Camby did it. Larry Johnson did it. UNLV Arkansas, that game I just referenced. Ewing and Mullen both won National Player of the Year awards. They did it in 84-85. Ralph Sampson, Scott May at Indiana. Sampson was obviously at Virginia. David Thompson did it with NC State. Elvin Hayes and Jerry Lucas. So those are the players that were in a 1-2 game in the regular season, specifically the regular season, and then went on to win a National Player of the Year honor. You toss in the Coach of the Year part of that, I can't tell you off the top of my head. I'm guessing Kay did not win Coach of the Year in 2006, and I don't think Self won it nationally in 2016. So this could be very rare, although by the nature of it, Parrish, you get into a spot, if it's deeper in the season and you're coaching a 1 or a 2 ranked team, then you'd be up for Coach of the Year. But it's probably pretty damn rare. But right now, Auburn's got a chance because it's got the front runner in both of those categories.
You could very easily turn in a ballot right now. In fact, it might be the proper ballot to turn in right now. Who's going to be the number 1 overall seed? Auburn, obviously. Who's the Coach of the Year? Bruce Pearl, reasonably. Who's the National Player of the Year? Janai Broom, perhaps. It's a totally reasonable thing. Awesome stuff happening at Auburn. Next up for the Tigers, Wednesday's game against John Calipari and the Arkansas Razorbacks. Next up for Alabama, they're playing Wednesday at Mizzou. Let's move on. 2 schools that have most recently won national championships in our sport. It's UConn and Kansas, and both lost as favorites to bad teams this weekend. We'll talk about the disappointing Huskies and the disappointing Jayhawks. We'll do that next. First, let's get a word from our partners.
Yeah, we always find our way back home.
The last 2 schools that have most recently won national championships in our sport, it's UConn and Kansas. UConn back-to-back in 23 and 24. Before that, Bill Self's Jayhawks both lost as favorites to bad teams this weekend. Final score, Seton Hall 69, UConn 68 in OT in Newark. Wild game. It's a quad 3 loss for UConn to a team that entered the weekend with a 1-12 record in the Big East and ranked 224th in the net. Yuck. Final score, Utah 74, Kansas 67 in Salt Lake City. That's a result that dropped KU to 4-7 in quadrant 1, just 9-8 in the first 2 quadrants. Norlander, Kansas and UConn. It was a while ago. You might not remember, but they were 1st and 3rd in the preseason AP poll. I no longer have either of them in the top 25 and 1. Which team are you least optimistic about moving forward? The Jayhawks or the Huskies? Can you I'll ask it that way. Which one are you like, I think I'm out on this team. I don't see it anymore.
Well, if you're listening and you heard Parrish say 1 and 3 and you're like, who was 2? It was Bama, by the way. Auburn preseason was number 11. Kansas. Now I would say Kansas. Now Kansas lost to a marginally better team at Utah. I mean, Seton Hall had 1 win in the Big East this season before Saturday, and it was at home. It was also in overtime, and it was against DePaul. Brendan Marks of The Athletic had, let me find this real quick. The answer is Kansas, and I'll explain it to you, but I do want to give him credit because he went and did the digging in real time on Saturday, and I saw he popped this up. UConn losing, albeit on the road, but against Seton Hall, registered as a notable loss by a reigning champion. So the 5 worst losses of the Ken Pom era by a reigning champion, and obviously the subsequent season, it was UConn to Houston in 2015, which is hilarious. That UConn losing to Houston, folks, don't forget how awful Houston was before Kelvin Sampson got there. That's the worst ever. It was 2-14 in 2015 when the reigning champion Huskies in the Kevin Ollie era lost there. Number 2 is what happened Saturday when Seton Hall was 2-13 in Ken Pom at the time of the loss. UConn also has the number 3 one on the list in 2005. Weird pattern. They lost to UMass when UMass was 180 in 05 post Emeka Okafor. Then Virginia to BC 4 years ago, and then in 2018, Carolina after winning. I remember this loss to Wofford when it was 163 at Ken Pom. So that is alarming, and I want to get on UConn. But I would still say that Kansas is a bit more because it's like we've seen. I get that Kansas got into the top 16 on Saturday's bracket reveal, and it's had some good wins. I would say that I see a lower ceiling on Kansas than I do UConn, while admitting on both of these teams, I've about reached the point here where even getting them into the second weekend is a hard proposition, Parrish. And for the UConn, like the UConn loss to Seton Hall is the result now that is making me say, okay, you know what? They've got talent. They've got a great coaching staff. There is a way about this UConn team where if they've got it all together, they're healthy enough, like, you know what? They could be a fascinating matchup for a number of teams. And you tell me they hit lightning in a bottle and they win 3 or 4 games in the tournament, who in the world's going to be shocked? That said, I've shifted off of that because you can't. And I know that like there were some brutal non-calls. I get it. I don't even disagree with it. You cannot get yourself caught in a game at Seton Hall. Seton Hall is terrible. Terrible. Zero excuse for getting caught. Although it is a bugaboo game, Dan's lost 4 in a row at his alma mater. He's 1-4 against Seton Hall all time on the road there. But it would be Kansas because the team is like stuck in, it's not even third gear. It's like it's between like second and third. Like they can't even jostle the joystick on it. And every season brings new storylines, intriguing plot twist. GP, this is that. I mean, preseason number 1, preseason number 3, 2 programs that you just set it up. The most recent national champions in our sport, and they are downright sputtering. I don't have a ton on the Kansas-Utah game because, in all transparency, like I was on the HQ for about 2 straight hours, so I barely got to watch it, but I was trying to keep an eye on a little bit here, and I know they just could not keep up, and Utah hit some big threes, but Kansas, you can't lose that game on the road. Like, I mean, you can. You're going to still get in the tournament. This is still champagne problems, big picture speaking, but this is now 2 years in a row. Preseason number 1 with vastly underachieving teams. How do you answer it? Which one do you have less faith in?
I think I've got less faith in Kansas. UConn just got McNeely back. They still got, I think, room to grow. This Kansas team, I think the way you put it is accurate. Like they feel like they're stuck and they can't get out of whatever they're in. Since February 1st, they're 2-3 with 3 losses to unranked teams: Baylor, Kansas State, Utah. In that stretch, they're 36th at Torvik. And here's the real problem: 115th in offensive efficiency. They can't score. So tell me if this is concerning big picture if you're a Kansas fan. We've mentioned that the Jayhawks were preseason number 1 this season. You know who was preseason number 1 last season?
It was KU, yes.
Just 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
This program that used to win Big 12 titles with no problem, with barely without exception, and then won the 2022 NCAA tournament, has been preseason number 1 the past 2 seasons and wildly disappointing both times. Preseason number 1 last season, finished 23-11, tied for 5th in the Big 12, lost in the second round of the NCAA tournament, finished 59th in offense and 20th in defense. This season, preseason number 1, currently 17-8, tied for 5th in the Big 12 again, 48th in offense, 5th in defense. 2 straight disappointing seasons for 62-year-old Bill Self, who was widely considered the best coach in the sport before these 2 years have taken. And still, let me be very clear, is still considered one of the great coaches in the sport. Let's not get it twisted. Like you mentioned, these are champagne problems. Kansas relative to the rest of the sport is still good. It just feels really bad relative to what we expect from this program. But would that concern you if you're a Kansas fan? This is 2 straight years where you had the highest expectations and you're just sputtering along both times. Last season, injury related much more than this season too.
Yeah, there's reason to kind of just, you are in unfamiliar territory. This is just not, and again, going to reemphasize this yet again, because 98% of fan bases are looking at Kansas as like, okay,
All right.
you understand how good you've had it forever. Roy Williams, the majority. You got to go back to Naismith when you sucked. Okay.
Yeah, he was terrible.
I know.
The guy's an embarrassment to the sport.
I know.
The guy who invented the sport is an embarrassment to the sport. If you can wrap your head around that.
Established on the show. Okay. Imagine inventing a sport and being terrible at coaching at it. Could not be me.
It's unbelievable.
Self had that heart procedure back in March of 23. Remember, he didn't coach in the tournament.
Right.
Kansas was a 1 seed that year. They got bounced by Muss's Arkansas team that season there, and that was just they didn't get to the second weekend, and most importantly, like, Self has been able to be healthy on the recovery and all that. But when I was looking at this yesterday, I was just like, all right, they won the title. What did they do in 23? I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Bill had to go through the procedure, and there was all this talk about, was he going to be able to coach and not, and he didn't wind up doing it. And since then, it's just been up and down, up and down. A year ago, remember what he said? He said, I think did he admit it in real time, or did he admit it like right at the end of the season? He was like, this is the first time in my career where I started looking ahead to next season before this season was over.
No, the season was we were still in the season, and he was talking about next season. That happened.
Yeah. And so now, like, this is next season. Like, we're here, and different roster with some of the same pillars. I don't think Bill Self should be anywhere, as a fan of the game and just in general, I don't think he should be anywhere close to retirement. I don't think that he is. I don't think Kansas fans want him to be that. And we're not even suggesting that. We're just stepping back, taking stock, and saying, highly accomplished coach, multiple national championships. What's going on here? And can this get back to the way that it was? I know there are some cynics out there that say, oh, look at how things change once we let all the schools get in on the NIL goodness and allow everyone to start really paying players. Look at how much I get it if you want to have fun with it and poke fun. I'm not going to say you can't do that. I won't even say you're all the way wrong on that. I don't think causation and correlation really intertwine the whole way on that. But it is certainly something that is happening here. And right now, it is up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Since January 11th, or since January 22nd, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, which means good news, I guess. I hope Tuesday night you're going up against a BYU team that's a bubble team that got a big win against K-State over the weekend. And if the pattern holds, you'll get a road win there. But yeah, I think Kansas fans are just in general, like, they're just like, all right, we'll just see how this plays out. Maybe they can get it right. If we can make the Sweet 16 sweet, but we need to just start over. Like the Dickinson and KJ Adams and DeJuan Harris, like, can you get us to next year when we're going to bring in one of the most electrifying guards that Bill Self has ever recruited, and hopefully, we can get back to the way that it used to be.
I think sometimes when people are talking about things and sort of thrusting opinions at it, like Bill Self is this or the program is that, it's helpful just to talk about it factually. Just say things that are undeniably true. This is true. Bill Self has been a power conference coach for a quarter century. He has never gone through 2 straight seasons like this. That's just true. That's true. So now we can start talking about why, if you want to have a conversation about why, but that part's true. He's been a power conference coach, arguably the best power conference coach for a quarter century. And his 2 worst seasons relative to expectations are this one and the last one. That's true.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, and I wrote recently, Kansas has a program, Parrish. It's even before him. Hasn't gone 2 straight seasons outside the top 3 in its league since I was 1 year old, like 1982, 83. Like it's been a long time. So we agree on that. What did you make of UConn though? Like, the way they lost. Okay, they had no business being in a tight game, and then they shouldn't have lost. They had a 7-point lead with 45 seconds to go in regulation, Parrish, and then they led by 5 in the final minute of the overtime session. They had a couple of inbounds plays that I couldn't even believe played out the way that they, like, a team coached by that staff melting down in those kind of moments. And credit to Seton Hall for causing the issue. It's a road environment. You get yourself caught in Jersey on a Saturday afternoon, maybe anything can happen. But it was some freakishness. There was a missed dunk that led to the carom way out, and then Seton Hall, Adewusu hits the 3 to get to overtime. I think that's the first time I've ever seen and I don't know if I've ever seen that before. A missed dunk
is crazy.
Goes long. The team recovers it, has time to kick it out, left wing, hit the 3, send it to overtime. I just don't ever, I'm sure it's happened at some point, but that exact sequence feels 1 in a million at best there. UConn's possessions in the final 8 on Saturday of overtime. Foul, turnover, forced a missed layup, UConn turnover, foul on Isaiah Coleman, UConn turnover, forced a missed layup, allowed Seton Hall to get the rebound, and then the tip in. And again, like I get it. There were some McNeely got hacked and there was no call. I'm not denying any of this stuff. But then they missed the heave at the end, and Seton Hall took advantage of opportunities that were right in front of it. Isaiah Coleman stepped up big there, and the Huskies now they lose. Your thoughts on Dan Hurley's program having a bit of up and down in itself? They're winning on the road at Marquette and UConn. Marquette and Creighton, and then they're getting picked off by maybe the worst power conference team in the sport.
No, their performances are like this, up and down, up and down. You know what else is like this? Everything connected to them. Yeah. Everything connected to them. And I know I never coached the game, so I might not be qualified to speak on this or anything else. But I imagine when everything connected to your program is uneven and just up and down and injuries and somebody back into the lineup, out of the lineup,
right,
and you're having to spend good portions of every press conference explaining what it is you said during a game, or what it is you did during a game, or what it is you said to a fan after a game, or what it is you said to a ref after a game. I just think for a program that has been so laser focused in recent years and bragged about it, it seems like the focus is all over the place right now. All over the place right now. And I think when your focus is all over the place, then it can become easy to, have these twists and turns in your season. But I say that as a non-coach.
Yeah. Listen, I was there in Maui. They lost close to Colorado, but they still lost to Colorado, like one of the worst teams in the Big 12. They got rolled by Dayton, a Dayton team that we thought was going to be an at-large candidate. Now isn't that. And this is also a UConn team that needed overtime to beat Xavier at home, not a projected tournament team. It needed 2 close shaves against Butler, including an overtime win at home. It had a 3-point win at home against Providence. So it has been flirting with fire here, and it's gotten burned. Now there's some good wins, some tough losses. I think UConn right now tonight is a 9. I think it's sitting on the 9 line. So it's not teetering on not being in the tournament. I don't think it's that at all. And I would think
I don't either, but check this out.
Okay.
And I told him to clip this last night. I was like, buddy, if you want to get Jerry Palm some death threats and go viral, clip this.
Let's not advocate for that, but go ahead.
Oh, I didn't mean to advocate for Jerry Palm death threats.
Okay.
But Jerry on television last night said, it's not hard to envision an NCAA tournament without UConn. He went there. And we were like, whoa.
I still think
they're going to get to the tournament. I agree with you. But our resident bracketologist is like, this resume's got some real issues. And if they don't get it straightened out, we could do a 60-18 tournament without our back-to-back champs. I don't think that's going to happen. But Jerry, and I want to be fair to Jerry. Jerry did not say, I think that's going to happen.
Right.
He's just saying it's not as far-fetched as you might imagine.
They've got at St. John's next Sunday. I'll be there at the Garden to see that. They're at Providence. Everything else is home. They've got Marquette at home, penultimate game in the regular season. So we'll see.
And some of it was just unlucky. Like the whole missed dunk sequence is that's just stupid, unlucky stuff. But here's the real problem. And we both love Shaheen, but his team is bad. We both know why his team's bad, because they're broke. But they're bad.
Worst NIL in the Big East, and it's not close.
They're broken bad. All right. We love Shaheen, but they're broken bad. You're up 5 with 13 seconds left in regulation against a broken bad team. Just finish it. Then you're up 5 in OT against a broken bad team. Just finish it. All right. You didn't ever expect to be in a tight game with Seton Hall late, but now you're up 5 with 13 seconds left. Knock it out and get out of there. Okay. You didn't expect to be in overtime against a team with 1 Big East win, but here you are. Now you're up 5. Knock it out and get out of here. That they couldn't just get out of the game at either point would be concerning for me. Some of it unlucky, but some of it their own doing.
Yeah, and I acknowledge, Hassan Diarra is he's busted up. He's not practicing. The point guard isn't what the situation isn't what they wanted to be. Mahaney hasn't been what they expected him to be. McNeely, he's had a good game. He was just okay. Caravan has really good spots, but you can't get caught in that kind of game. UConn remains, even with it just remains as compelling as almost any team in the country, just for reasons that we didn't necessarily expect to see. Tons happen this weekend, GP? You want to take a wide and far scanning tour of Saturday and Sunday?
You know what I like to call it? I prefer to call it the weekend whip-around. We'll do that next. First, let's get another word from our partners.
One of golf's elite courses, Quail Hollow, hosts the game's top players at the PGA Championship this May on CBS.
All right, it's weekend whip-around time. Let's start in the Big 12, where Houston took control of the conference race. Final score, Houston 62, Arizona 58 at the McKell Center. Houston now got a 2-game lead in the Big 12 standings with 6 left to play. Obviously, massive road victory for the Cougars. And it's just unbelievable what Kelvin Sampson has turned that thing into, because we all know this stuff.
We say this every – keep going. We could replay the segment that we've done here. Now, this is Big 12 specific, but this is now like 6 years in a row with this.
I know, but I got a new way to frame it. I don't think I've ever said this exactly, so let me have a new shot at something new. Houston has won league championships in 5 of the past 6 years, all right? The only time it didn't, you might remember, was 2021. And that is when the schedules were so imbalanced because COVID cancellations that Wichita State actually won the league despite only playing 13 conference games. And then that tricked them into hiring their interim coach. And, buddy, they ain't been the same since. All right?
Well, today it changed. And we'll get to that. We'll get to that before the end of the show.
Maybe they're turning it around. My poor Tigers took another one. So that's the 1 year that the Houston didn't get, but they were still the best team in their league that season. All right. So here's the truth. Houston has been the best team in its league for 7 straight years, regardless of league. And it was easy when they were in the AAC to just dismiss it. But then they quite literally joined the, quote, best conference in the country. And they won it last season by 2 games. Then they lose their first-team All-American point guard, do not replace him with a first-team All-American anything, and now they're up 2 games again on the entire league. I mean, what? Just that alone, what I just told you is enough to put Kelvin Sampson in the Naismith Memorial Hall of Fame someday, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. He damn well better be on his way. And there was a time, even maybe 5 years ago, I think I wrote it when they made the 21 Final Four. So they didn't win the American the same year they made the Final Four. Is that what I'm putting together right now?
If that's the same year that
was the COVID tournament. So
yeah, but it was it was wrong because the league wouldn't schedule games. I remember being critical of the league because it was like, what are you doing? Like not because they had opportunities to do makeup games and they wouldn't do them.
I remember this. Yes.
It was like a little bit of a thing that seemed stupid, but that is because it was. But that's the reason Houston didn't. That's the reason the AAC's best team didn't win the AAC regular season title that season. Is because the league office didn't know how to make up games properly.
And then Sampson made the Final Four. And listen, I don't feel like he is. No retirement of anyone over the age of 50 would ever shock me. Not a single one. However, I just don't think that he is. I don't think this is happening for him in the next 3 years at least. I just don't think he's getting there. He's still rolling. He loves it. And I think that he's got a wonderful chance at making another one. He would have been to the Final Four last year, in my opinion, if Jamal Shea doesn't get hurt.
I agree.
Highly reasonable. What if they have won 11 in a row on the road? It's ridiculous. Now they took some losses in neutral play, obviously earlier this season at the Players Era tournament, but Houston is 6-1 in quad 1 games after starting 0-2 in their past 7. They're 6-1, and they were able to. Now I was en route driving from my house down to HQ, so I was listening on my phone via YouTube TV as I was doing this, and so I wasn't able to actually watch it. But I leave my house. Arizona's in a better spot. They were up 7, 8, 9 points, and then they had a drought. Houston changed the game tight late, and they give Tommy Lloyd his first back-to-back losses in league play since Lloyd got to Arizona. And in the process here, Arizona a week ago was in a position, essentially, borderline pole position of being the top team in the Big 12, and now it's going to be Houston. They're 2 games up. Milos Uzan had his best game in a Houston uniform. I remember talking to Kellen Sampson, the associate head coach. I think it was in November, maybe it was coming out of Players Era, and he was basically saying Uzan isn't going to be our best guy, but I'm telling you, if we're going to be what last year's team could be and what, we were in 21 and recent teams. Like he's going to have to be the guy that can be the guy on certain nights. And damn, was he that guy against Arizona, supremely impressive. And just, there is a will. I almost feel it's like, I saw this today with St. John's as well. And we'll get to them later on the show, but there are just certain teams, because when you study up, you go through the scout, you watch the tape, you see what they do, and you watch the previous 3, 5, 7, 9 games, and you see how they are able to just suffocate teams and induce them into things they don't want to do, and then you're going to prep to go against that. There is something collectively, mentally, that Houston can just vice grip most opponents on most nights. I mean, listen, the poll right now is which team, and we'll get to plenty of them, but there were a bunch of teams that went on the road against good competition and got road games. Right behind me, road food. Right here, my record behind it, because it was a road food weekend situation. To me, I think they're all valuable, but to me, the one that resonated the most heavily was Houston, because I thought Auburn could win the SEC whether or not it won on Saturday. I thought that regardless of what Michigan State or Michigan did on the road, that wouldn't necessarily turn it one way or the other, whether they would win the regular season in their league. To me, Houston getting this win, it almost locks up that they're going to be the Big 12 regular season champion. And here we are again. And, they've got a shot here. They're going to have to win a lot, but they've got a shot at being a 1 seed again.
Just a couple of other notable things out of the Big 12. Texas Tech 93, Oklahoma State 55. I don't bring that up because it's an interesting result, although it's an overwhelming result for the Red Raiders. But just a few days after I was in Lubbock watching JT Toppin go 41-15, he went 32-12. And became the first Big 12 player to get 30-10 in consecutive games since Blake Griffin in 2009, and the first player to do it in any league this season. He's a serious part of the All-American conversation right now, isn't he?
That's what I said when so Hakeem Dermish brought up this OptaStat stat. So I'm gonna go even more than that. So here's the exact language. He's an All-American. JT Toppin's an All-American right now. When I say second or third team, you can hash that out, but he's in there. Last 2 games, JT Toppin has 73 points, 27 boards, and a field goal percentage of 74.4%. No other men's or women's D1 player or an NBA player has hit 73 points, 27 rebounds, and at least 74.4% from the field in the past 25 years. That's just good on you, JT Toppin. The result is whatever, because Oklahoma State's not good this season, but I'm glad you brought it up, because we'll see how things develop over the next 4 to 6 weeks. But Toppin right now is an All-American. I thought there were 2 noteworthy bubble games here. You had BYU beating Kansas State 80-65. I think the Cougars are right there on that cut line. They host Kansas, as I mentioned. And then, Baylor really got itself into a wrestle match against West Virginia and was able to win in overtime. I thought there were a couple teams that just got wins this weekend that they weren't flirting with disaster or anything like that, Parrish, but just you'd rather not have that loss on the resume, on the dossier, if you will. And so I thought that Baylor getting that one kind of snuck under the radar a little bit, but I thought that was notable as well in the Big 12.
Yeah, Kansas State losing, 6-game winning streak now over. For what it's worth, I had both Brent Stover and Jerry Palm having dinner with me last night, so this came up.
Sounds like a hell of a trio there.
This came up, but according to Jerry, like, the Kansas State at-large stuff is just kind of done at this point. Like, if we go on a run and you do that, yes, you're gonna probably need to win your Big 12 tournament. Is where Jerry Palm is on the KSU Wildcats right now. Let's go to the Big 10.
Okay,
and let's start with I think the big headline: Tom Izzo making history. Michigan State 70, Illinois 65. Tom Izzo is now officially the Big Ten's all-time winningest coach. This kind of stuff means something to Tom, and I think you can see it on his face and hear it in his voice every time. Some coaches are dismissive of it. We've seen this interview. We have seen this interview 50 times. Hey, coach, so you just became the all-time winningest coach in whatever history, your school history, your conference history, whatever, and this is what you hear 50 times. Well, it just means I'm old, and it just means that I've coached a lot of good players. And they just try to dismiss it a little bit, or discount it, or shush it away. Maybe out of humility, I don't know. But it means something to Tom, and he doesn't try to pretend that it doesn't. Those are tears. Those are real tears, and that's a real crack in his voice. And I've seen Tom Izzo cry as much as I've seen any man cry, maybe in my life that I know. And I love it. I love that he shows his emotions in that way. And I love that he reached this milestone because he's got other things he wants to do. In terms of accomplishments, he would maybe actually kill to get a second national championship. But think of all the great coaches who have come through the Big Ten, Bob Knight among them. Nobody's won more games in that league than Tom Izzo.
Yeah, no, wonderful night for Michigan State. By the way, we are humming on a Sunday live chat. Appreciate it. Iowa State fans, you got a good team, but you played a down Cincinnati team. We're not diving into the Cyclones here on a Sunday. You'll have plenty of opportunities. We'll get to you. You're still a really good team, man. Iowa State fans, they get feisty. I hear you. Michigan State, good night. Not a good night for Illinois. On multiple fronts. One, you had the snafu with Terrence Shannon Jr. They bring him back to honor him and hang his jersey in the rafters, and then the whole damn thing is upside down, which is like massively embarrassing. Like I don't know if you dress rehearsed that or whatever, but that's a toughie there.
That was tough. I hope like it looked like Terrence was able to laugh about it a little bit, and chuckle and have fun with it. So I hope you're able to do that rather than be frustrated by it. As I was setting up my background tonight, just you open it up on the bed and it's one direction or the other, and sometimes it's upside down. And then I have to, but it was, as I took it off the bed to place it, it was upside down. And I was like, maybe I should just leave it upside down. Like maybe. And I said, nah, I flipped it over. And here we are. But
Illinois had won the game, maybe, but they take the loss. And you know what it called to mind? 30-0, Elite Eight last year, because Illinois went 0 of 19 on its home floor, went 0 for 19 down the final. I got it here. 8:29 of the game. Michigan State closed on a 15-0 run. Illinois is now 3-3 in its last 6 home games. Yakachonis and Avicic didn't score a field goal in the second half. I don't understand Illinois, and there was a lot of roster turnover from last season to this season. I'm going to see him in person next weekend at the Garden. If you tell me they beat Duke by 7, I'll throw my hands up in the air and say, sure, man, whatever. They are irregular at best right now. They are a rogue jet in the sky. I don't even get how they went that cold. And some credit to Michigan State, but some of that's just bad shooting, bad luck. 70-65, you go down, and in the process, like they've just taken on too much resume damage now, where I do think that if they had been able to play a little bit to their averages and somehow find a way to a 3-4-5 seed and they get the right matchup, hey man, that's a real Final Four sleeper. They're just going to take on a seed now that it's going to be too steep of a mountain. Maybe they can win 1 game or 2 games, but yeah, before we get to the rest of the Big Ten, I just wanted to shoot it back to you on Illinois. Another just intriguing team. Like there's just a couple of teams, or even more than a couple. There's like 5 or 6 teams. When I tune in to watch them, I just don't know what I'm going to get and whether I'll be amazed by it or appalled by it.
No, there are times where you watch Illinois and you go, all right, that's the best team in the Big Ten, or at least the team with the highest ceiling in the Big Ten. You watch them and you go, oh, that's a team I could see going to the Final Four. And then there are other times you watch them and you go, well, I guess this is why they lose so much, I guess this is why they lose so much. So just inconsistent, but they'll get in the bracket, and I'm with you. Exactly right. Lose at home to Michigan State one weekend, beat Duke in the Garden the next. Not hard to envision. Not predicting it, but not hard to envision. Wisconsin 94, Purdue 84. Mm-hmm. If we're talking most interesting results of the weekend, Auburn winning at Alabama. Let's put that one. If you want to go Houston winning at Arizona, fine with me. But Wisconsin winning at Purdue has got an argument to be in that conversation as well. And I thought this was interesting. Wisconsin was 20 of 22 inside the arc.
A joke. That's not interesting. That's phenomenal.
90.9%. It's the highest 2-point field goal percentage for any road team in a Division I game in the past 15 years, according to Jared Burson, the man who invented research. Before Jared Burson, nobody knew if anything had ever happened. He invented this stuff. Okay, so I read that, and I'm like, all right, let me go look at this. And so last season, Purdue 2-point defensive field goal.
Edey.
Okay, I know, but this is what's interesting about it. So they had Zach Edey, you might remember.
They didn't have a man blocking out the sun. Yes, continue.
And they allowed opponents to only shoot 47.7% from 2-point field goal range. Now, that's not great. It was 67th in the country, but it was 67th in the country. Do you know where they're at right now? I don't want forget percent. Just ranked nationally in 2-point defensive field goal percentage.
Yeah,
I just told you they were 67th last year with Zach Edey.
I'll say 249. That's a complete in the dark guess.
317. They're down to 317 at 54.9. So if you want to know how much Zach Edey mattered, they lost him, and now people are just making all the shots against him inside the arc. It's tough. Man. It's a tough situation. It's tough. It's
tough. Our poll question is, which team got the biggest road win of significance? It's a blowout. I didn't think it'd be this. But Auburn, 73% of the vote. Wisconsin is second, 13%. Houston, 9%. And then Michigan State at Illinois.
Well, logically, isn't it just obvious? Like the team that went to the number 2 team in the country and won? That's
sure. Like, yeah. Yes. I thought, but I thought the Houston won for larger purposes. But I get it. I'm not shocked by it, but I'm a little surprised by the margin there. It was. Go ahead.
Anything else in the Big Ten you care about?
I just want to talk. Yeah, Wisconsin real quick. You mentioned the 2 of 22. Wisconsin got its largest win at Purdue in 10 years. I think that's fitting. I said on HQ, this is the best Wisconsin team since Decker and Kaminsky 10 years ago. And over the past 4 games, it's 2-pointers and 3-pointers. Wisconsin has 55 made 2-pointers and 49 trays over the past 4 games. And John Tonje has been tremendous. I mean, averaging more than 24 points in this past 7 games, continues to step up. Interesting note on Purdue. Location matters, although this one was at home. They're 4-5 against ranked competition this season. Quality team, easily top 16 seed and all that kind of stuff. But that was the win. We mentioned Wisconsin on the Friday show. Told you about, they were better seeding than maybe a lot of people realize. And then literally the bracket preview show ends. Wisconsin Purdue comes on CBS. Purdue gets out to a nice little run to start, and then you got a dude named Jack Janicki, who's like the 6th guy off the bench, having like his best game of his young career there. And 58 second half points at Mackey is just absolutely outrageous. Only other Big Ten one that I'd bring up that stood out to me was what happened on Sunday. I was prepping and kid making dinner and all this stuff, so I didn't have time to get details. Rumor has it Hoiberg might have hurt his hand at halftime. Before Nebraska came back from a 20-point deficit to win against Northwestern. That's just notable because Nebraska is a tournament team right now, and they haven't had a lot of notable wins, but, go on the road, beat Northwestern, and I thought that was interesting. And Hoiberg is just not the kind of guy, like, not that he can't get fire and passion. I just can't picture Fred Hoiberg, going totally maniacal in the locker room at halftime. Maybe he didn't. Maybe it was a super weird thing, but people noticed that he had his hand patched up, so I'd be interested to know if it was, so if he went Woody Hayes in the locker room, or if it was just he accidentally sliced his hand on like.
Well, I don't think we should be suggesting that Fred Hoiberg went Woody Hayes. I don't think I don't think that's okay.
Not. Well, first of all, he never would. I'm not talking specifically the thing that Woody Hayes is most known for. I was just saying like fiery temper kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
Regardless. Let's go. Can we go Big East? Sunday's big result here.
Yeah, it happened about 20 blocks to my left. St. John's 79, Creighton 73. If we think Houston might have secured the Big 12 title this weekend, I'm even more sure that St. John's secured a Big East title this weekend.
Yeah, that they did. I mean,
that's done.
It's again, it would have to be like an Auburn level kind of collapse, even maybe not to that extent, but I thought it was going to be the case regardless. But Creighton had the opportunity, 79-73. St. John's wins. Thankfully, at least he came back in and played. Ryan Kalkbrenner went down. He was on the deck for about 2 minutes, had to be helped off the floor. And in that moment, I think Creighton was down 4. They were in like a 4-minute scoring drought, and you're like, did Creighton's season just go out the window? And then lo and behold, he comes back in. God love our buddy John Fanta. They're invoking the Willis Reed. Comes back.
Oh, I didn't even. By the way, I never want to be like I didn't. But when I super slow-mo replay, I was like, well, what hurt exactly? It didn't look.
Yeah, it didn't look bad. Well, he was grabbing his foot. I wondered.
I know, but it didn't look bad to me.
A bone in it. Who the hell knows?
Sometimes I look at a replay and I go, ooh, I cringe. I'm like, oh my God. And I looked at that one and I was like, dude, just get up. What's the problem? I don't know.
You're sitting there in your hotel, 20 blocks away, being like, dude, just Get up. What's the matter?
I was saying just get up. That's what I was saying. Just get up. What's your problem?
He did come back.
Right.
I had the game on in the living room, and my wife was not even paying attention, but she I don't know, she would take a look here, and she's like, she goes, these guys are in college? I was like, yeah. She's like, and Ashworth came on the screen, and she's like, he looks 29. And I'm like,
he's close.
I was like, he's married. And she's like, these do not look like they should be college. It was just funny because she doesn't watch a ton of ball, and they just popped on the screen. She thinks we're watching a sport filled with like 30-year-old men. In some ways, yeah, I can I hear that. Then I had to explain the whole COVID year. It was riveting, let me tell you. Anything else in the Big East? I don't think so, right? Although I will say, let's do the Pitino connection, because how about this? Richard and Rick Pitino both coached on Sunday, both at home, both against the top challenger in their conference. They won their games within 80 minutes of each other, and in the process, both got to 22-4.
It's awesome.
Kind of wild that all of that stuff really aligned so close to each other. New Mexico beat Utah State in a terrific game on CBS Sports Network. Real back and forth affair. Lobos, they should be ranked on Monday. I know you probably haven't looked at it too deep just yet, because you haven't done your top 25-1 for Monday just yet. But at 22-4, New Mexico has one loss since December 7th, a 1-point loss at a not that great San Jose State team, but they're in command by 2 games. Just like St. John's is now 2 games up on Creighton, New Mexico is now 2 games up on a good Utah State team with its 82-79 win. And Donovan Dent was awesome again. True Washington had his best game as a Lobo, stepped up big. This was to switch from the Johnny's Creighton game and then get into this, and the environment there was incredible. How about that Sunday for the Patinos, man? They've gone through a lot as a basketball family, but they've never had what they're experiencing right now. That's pretty damn cool.
No, it's awesome. They've Rick's obviously been through a lot professionally and personally. Richard is somebody who got ran out of Minnesota. That's not fun.
Yeah.
And yet here they are, both running their programs as well as they can be run, reasonably speaking. It's terrific stuff. As for New Mexico in the top 25-1, I don't know if I'll have room for them unless I get rid of my alma mater, which leads us to the AAC.
Let's go.
Wichita State 84, Memphis 79 in overtime. It's a third quadrant 3 loss for Penny Hardaway's Tigers. Obviously, dropping a team from 12 out is unusual, but there ain't nobody else in the rankings with 3 quadrant 3 losses. There's nobody else in the top 50 of the net with 3 quadrant 3 losses. This is the problem, among the problems with playing in this league. On one hand, yeah, you get a bunch of bad games, just go win them all. The problem is most teams just don't go win all their bad games, and you lose. And when you lose them, there's nowhere to make up for it. You cannot make up for it. How about this? Memphis has played 13 conference games so far. 11 of them fall in quadrant 3 or quadrant 4. It is nothing but landmines. It's just an awful way to live. Whereas, you ready for, in the SEC, the only quadrant 3 games that are even available are home games against LSU and South Carolina. That's it. And every other game you can play in the SEC, home or away, is going to be in quadrant 1 or quadrant 2, except for your home games against LSU and South Carolina. In the AAC, everything Memphis plays falls in quadrant 3, quadrant 4. The AAC is now 11th in the net, 10th at KenPom. Memphis left CUSA to be in this league, and now CUSA rates better than this league in both the net and KenPom. That's where we're at. The American right now in the net is behind the Mountain West Conference, the A10, CUSA, the WCC, and yes, the Missouri Valley Conference. Wow. It is awful, and it's why priority number 1 for that university, at least for the athletic department, and I would argue for the university, you got to get out of this league. I know this doesn't mean anything to anybody that doesn't live where I live, but I'm just telling you, you are losing a generation of fans because you're playing in a league that doesn't have comparable athletic departments, and you can't, even when you have a football program that wins 11 games and a basketball program that is about to win the conference championship, you're having a very difficult time getting your fans to engage with it.
I mean, to me, this sounds like at worst the segment number 2 for the Gary Parrish show tomorrow. That's for damn sure.
It'll lead 5 more things you need to know.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and as a reminder, Memphis had the window, maybe still can again, to go to the Pac-12 and opted against it. It's just, you got to get out. You got to get out.
I would reconsider strongly.
You got to
negotiate as hard as you can, but I would reconsider strongly. You can't even. This is what Memphis people, let's just say, would say before the past 12 months. Well, like if we're good, it'll be fine. It sucks to be in this league, but if we just go out and win the league, it'll be fine. Well, you didn't win your league in football, but you did win 11 games and your fans didn't show up. You're about to win the league in men's basketball. You've been ranked much of the season, and FedEx Forum does not look like what it used to look like. And it's hard to keep your fans interested in a league where they don't feel like they're looking at comparable athletic departments. And it's a real issue that's got to be addressed one way or another.
And by the way, like Memphis is going to make the tournament, make it with room to spare. We'll be anywhere from a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Who knows? We'll see. It's going to get in. And so the loss in a vacuum isn't whatever. Sometimes you're just going to get tripped up. That's the point, is that They don't have a lot of room to spare in this league, and you could get sickness. You could have a player that's pissed off at his girlfriend. Any number of stuff that'll privately happen that any coach will tell you, like, damn, we went through that stretch and for a good week, it was not fun to be around our team, and we got through it. Like I'm not saying that's happening right now with Memphis. I'm just saying, for one reason or another, you just don't have a good game, and that happened here. Wichita State on Sunday got its first win over a top 50 KenPom team since 2021. The year it won the league. That was the last time. 84-79. Oh, by the way, was the final score in OT. Terrence Oglesby had a really good job on doing commentary on that game. But yeah, so it's a reasonable loss, but it's now the second loss, and so as a result, like you're going to find yourself getting knocked down a peg or two, and you're in a place that you don't want to be, certainly for the basketball.
And that's the biggest issue, is that when you inevitably slip up and take losses like this, because you are really the biggest game on everybody's schedule. And when you inevitably slip up and lose one, you cannot make up for it. There is nowhere for you to go, okay, let us go at a quad 1 win and we'll offset that. Those do not exist. And I've heard some people make the argument, and then we'll move on. Well, like, hey, John Calipari lived through this. And so the key, John Calipari was in a bad league too at Memphis. And, the key, well, yeah, he never lost. But he never lost. And you know why? Because when you have Derrick Rose, when you have the number 1 pick in the draft and a first-team All-American and Chris Douglas-Roberts and 2 more future NBA players and Joey Dorsey and Robert Dozier, then, yeah, you're not going to slip up. Then you're just so overwhelmingly better than everybody else, you're not going to slip up. These Tigers are good. They're not that. They don't have Derrick Rose and Chris Douglas-Roberts, all right? So you're going to slip up when you're a borderline top 25 team as opposed to the number 1 team. You're going to slip up against schedules like this sometimes. And the fact that you have nowhere to make up for it, it's just every one of these, it's going to slide you down and then slide you down. And you're going to look up and go, man, remember when Jerry Palm projected us as a 4? Now we're at 8. What happened? Well, what happened? Yeah. You lose to Wichita State, you lose to Temple, and now here you are.
All right, let's go SEC. There's a few bubble results that I want to get to and just lay out something real quick that I talked about late on HQ. But let's go to your home state. Mississippi State beat Ole Miss 81-71. That's now, if you're not keeping track at home, Chris Jans' team has now swept Chris Beard's program this season. And Mississippi State, another team, just an intriguing resume. They're 6-2 on the road. That's mighty, mighty impressive. And they did this only 6 points from Cameron Matthews. Both teams are easily going to make the tournament, room to spare. So something of a nondescript result on a fairly busy weekend overall. But I actually thought this was helpful to Mississippi State achieving its objective. Like if you tell me that the Bulldogs wind up as, like say a 5 seed, that's not something that maybe a lot of people have an eye on right now, but I think they could certainly get there. And by nature of sweeping the likes of an Ole Miss, I think they move along that much further.
Yeah, I mean, that was impressive to go into the pavilion and win the game the way they did. That's a tough place to play. I think both of those teams are legitimate top 25 teams. Like, I could see either one of them or both in the Sweet 16, but that's a big accomplishment. Like, I don't know if Ole Miss Mississippi State basketball is the most heated basketball. I'm not trying to compare it to Duke Carolina, but just broadly speaking, those alums, like they care about everything: baseball, basketball, football, you name it. And so anytime you can get a regular season sweep over your in-state rival, that's a big deal.
The SEC has more bubble teams than I think we discussed and really has been acknowledged. To be fair, we're still, right now, 1 month from this very moment, we're going to have, by the way, the field at 68 out there. We're going to have the entire bracket, and 1 month away, folks. It's going to be an incredible next 4 weeks. So lock in here and buckle up. But Vanderbilt, Texas, Arkansas, Georgia, Oklahoma. That's 5 teams in the SEC that are bubble teams. And over the weekend, 4 of them lost. Vandy lost 81-76 after getting up on Tennessee. Tennessee overcame overcame its largest halftime deficit at home since 2017. Lanier came up big, and then Ziegler was just awesome in the second half. He was just without him on the floor, they wouldn't have won. And I actually thought if Vanderbilt could have gotten the win, like, ooh boy, you're really encroaching on something. If not a lock status, just big time stuff. So they don't get the win. Texas did get the home win against a shorthanded Kentucky team. Kentucky, by the way, yet to win 3 in a row in SEC play, but they were down their top 3 point guards. Trey Johnson was awesome. And Tremont Mark, both of them, they combined for more than 50 points, and they were really, really good. Arkansas lost against A&M on the road, which is to be expected, but Arkansas, you could have maybe made the case they were going to Dayton to start the weekend, and now I think they should be out of the field. Georgia cannot get out of its own way. It loses by 13 at home. That's damaging. This team is 2-8 in its last 10. All of its losses, by the way, are quad 1. They're 2-10 in quad 1 and undefeated against quads 2, 3, and 4, but they're now dancing on a knife's edge. And then Oklahoma had a 5-point lead with about 34 seconds to go against LSU and blew it and lost 82-79. And now Oklahoma, which got out to a 13-0 start, has 3 wins since then. So to you, of those 5 games involving bubble teams in the SEC, which one do you think carries the most significance?
The Oklahoma losing, because you're already right there on the in-out line, and then you take among the worst losses you can take in the league. There aren't many bad losses
Literally
you can take in the league.
Second worst loss that you can take in the league. The only one worse would be losing at home to South Carolina.
Right. Those are the ones, if you're a bubble team, you got to get, right? You ain't beating Auburn. You ain't beating Alabama. You ain't beating Florida. I mean, you might. I got it. But, like, you can't give away the LSU game. Like, the LSU game, for every SEC, I say this as respectfully as I can say it. I'm not trying to pile on. But if you're a bubble team in the SEC, you do not want to be losing LSU games.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Keep that. We've been talking a lot about 12-bit SEC, 13-bit SEC. I said in December, called my shot like December 10th or whatever it was, that it would be a 12-bit league. There's 16 teams in the league. LSU and Carolina won't be going because now we're down to 14. And there are 5 bubble teams right now. So there are 9 locks. Like, they're going to get 11. I think the math is going to math. They'll get 11. They'll tie the Big East, but they can get 12. But take a look at the schedules there. We'll see. It's still an awesome league, but it is not. You look at what those teams have done over the past 3 weeks, and they have not been taking care of enough business to better ensure that the SEC sets a record, which is no huge tragedy or anything. But I couldn't help but notice that they were involved in a lot of games, and almost all of them took a loss. Not too much else. I did want to touch on Wake Forest went on the road. That was in our Final Four and won 77-66. We both had that. Bingo, bango. I do think you beat me in the Final Four and won this week as well. A significant result for Steve Forbes' team. I think the Deeks right now, although I have not done the math, and I know Paul has not updated his bracket, I think Wake Forest should be in for now. Now you're in the ACC, landmines galore. Don't go and lose another home game of a quad 3 level or worse. But I thought that was a significant one. Both teams were shorthanded as well. SMU was down 2 starters. There was no Hildreth for Wake Forest, but I thought that was big. And then only other one I got on my sheet here, GP, is Michigan did win on the road Sunday on CBS, 86-83 over Ohio State. In doing so, it was able to maintain its status. 1-game lead in the Big Ten standings. Dusty May continues to do a good job. And how about this nugget from our research team? Michigan has now won 6 straight games by 4 points, or most. The way it's worded exactly is most consecutive games won by 4 points or less since 1950. The record is 6, and Michigan has tied it. So they've done that now. LSU did it in 2020. Utah did it in 86, and Murray Present did it in 1981. So I don't know if it's going to come back to burn them. I know they lost some tight games earlier this season, but the Wolverines, they find a way, and they got it done on the road. And in doing so, Buckeyes are bubblicious. That would have been a good one if they could have pulled it off at home, but they couldn't get it done.
All right, before we get out of here, let's look ahead to the next 2 nights real quick. On Monday, Duke at Virginia and Arizona at Baylor are going to headline the schedule. On Tuesday, we'll be back. Eye on College Basketball Podcast on CBS Sports Network at 1 p.m. Eastern. We'll have an hour for you there. Then I'll throw on a suit, and I'll be in studio all night. We got a triple header, 7 Eastern, Loyola Chicago at Davidson, 9 Eastern, Seton Hall at Marquette, 11 Eastern, Fresno State at San Diego State. Elsewhere on Tuesday, Purdue at Michigan State, Texas A&M at Mississippi State, Illinois at Wisconsin. What stands out to you?
Monday, it's the Arizona-Baylor game more than anything because Baylor gets the chance at home. See how Arizona responds after 2 in a row. On Tuesday, I think Purdue-Michigan State, pretty objectively, is the best game between the two most highest-rated teams, I guess. So that one's notable. We'll also talk a little bit about this as we do in the last segment on the Tuesday show there. What else? UConn at home against Nova. How the Huskies going to look there? Illinois at Wisconsin. That feels like it's Wisconsin should win that game with some ease, but the Big Ten could, and that's by the way, that's the best league race in general. 4 or 5 teams with a real hope, even though Michigan leads it right now. So we'll see. Monday, as has been the case, Monday's just got maybe 1 or 2 games keep an eye on, and then Tuesday is just. I mean, these Tuesdays and Saturdays have been they're always good. Don't get me wrong, but they just feel even more loaded up than they have in recent seasons. So yeah, Tuesday will be a big one, and we will be back on the air 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS Sports Network.
Can't wait. Let's call it a day. Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Terry Teagle, legend. Huck, Larnell. Thank you guys once again for watching, listening to the Eye on College Basketball podcast. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, Apple, Spotify. There is more of us than there are of them. That should be reflected in the comments. So do that, and we will talk to you again Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS Sports Network. Till then, take care.